We're going to be, the next few lessons, the next few videos are going to be based on Chapter 4 of Race and Ethnicity. And remember the rationale for us doing this. Successful, animated, engaged students are students who read. And that this primarily is a course of directed reading. This electronic course is built around a curated collection of articles, books, and collections of articles called readers, as well as a YouTube channel where the contents are similar, and we are putting this together along with these videos that will help introduce you to some of these works so that you will begin to read. And for you to be able to do this, you need to have access to the Google Drive. You need to have a computer with all the programs that you need to read and highlight and note the PDFs. You need to have access to good dictionaries on your computer. And then you will fly. So let's go into full screen as we address the issue of ethnic conflict. Conflict is a feature of any social setting where there is more than two or more parties who are differing and who have got competing interests. And it's therefore unsurprising that sociologists have paid considerable attention to conflict, and they have developed a number of theories of conflict. Conflict was central to the work of Karl Marx, who was viewed as a founding feature in the discipline of sociology, although he actually never claimed to be a sociologist. In Marxist theory, conflict is defined in terms of class conflict, Max Weber, who was a non-Marxist but who was influenced by Marx, offered a more generalized perspective on conflict, and he too placed particular interest and emphasis on class-based conflicts and on the significance of differences of power between competing parties in conflict situations. Perhaps the theorist most responsible for developing a broader, more inclusive view of conflict is Randall Collins. Summarizing the state of conflict theory today, Sanderson contends that conflict theories, despite their differences, share 4 presuppositions which are summarized below. Conflict can be between individuals or collectivities, arises as a consequence of competing interests, which can be material or ideal, or of competing for scarce resources. For example, conflict can occur over formulas for school funding based on local taxes. Property taxes favour privileged communities with better tax bases at the expense of poorer communities. Not surprisingly, conflict over competing ways to finance public education often pits wealthy communities against residents of inner cities and poor rural communities. Conflict can occur over many types of interests and resources. Individuals can, and sometimes do, fight over something as inconsequential as TV programs. Criminologists have long known that when disputes such as this escalate and at times lead to homicide, the reasons for one person taking the life of another is often trivial, it's unimportant. At the collective level, the issues are generally far from trivial, in particular when the states concern access to power and the valuable economic resources. Food riots that occur in poor countries when the price of grain rises increases in the price of bread are a case in point. Conflicts generally result in the emergence of winners and losers, and the winners are often in a position of control and dominate the losers. For example, there's a tendency for competitive markets to move from a number of relatively equal-sized firms competing on generally equal terms to monopolies, as some firms are successful in the market while others are not. Success provides financial resources that can be used to drive the competition out of town. And Walmart is a case in point. Walmart is a large chain in America, and in Thailand, Tesco, Lotus and Big C are the best local example. The privileged and dominant groups are have a considerably greater say in deciding how the society is organised and how resources and power will be distributed. So a good example of this is evident in the economic crisis in the US and the UK in 2008. There is considerable consensus that the cause of the crisis was the highly complex and risky investment strategies in the largest corporations in the financial sector. And this is something that happened in 2008, which could have been very much like the Great Depression in the 1930s, with mass unemployment and a lack of available credit. There are a number of types of ethnic conflict. So we've talked about general conflict, but there are a number of types of ethnic conflict. And Sanderson offered a perspective on conflict in general terms, but the focus here is on conflict predicated on race and ethnicity. As the previous chapter has indicated, being defined as a member of a particular group can have great tangible, material and non-material consequences for individuals, with the ordinary or average member of advantaged community possessing distinctive benefits compared to the ordinary or average member of disadvantaged community. While our empirical focus in the preceding chapter was on the US, group interrelations predicated on structured patterns of inequality characterize other societies as well. Advantaged groups have an incentive to ensure that other groups remain subordinate and are often quite willing to engage in actions intended to ensure their subordinate position. This is what Tilley had in mind in describing exploitation and opportunity hoarding as contributing factors in durable inequality. When such a social arrangement takes hold, it's not surprisingly, a cause of resentment that can rise to actions on the part of oppressed and marginalised that are designed to challenge the status quo of either turning the tables on those currently in control or by attempting to promote a society that they consider to be just and equitable. Across the globe, there's been a dramatic increase in ethnic conflicts within and across nation-states in the decades following the major world wars of the 20th century. As we move further into the 21st century, race and ethnicity do not only, as we move into the 21st century, it is clear that race and ethnicity do not only categorize, they also place people in hierarchies that define groups in terms of whether they are to be favoured or not, privileged or not, empowered or not, economically advantaged or not. This process of dividing people along racial and ethnic lines has consequently resulted in various forms of intra-group conflict, coercion and violence, including, in the most extreme forms of conflict, attempts to completely exterminate an entire group. So in this chapter, they examine the following: genocide, ethnic rights, succession, irredentism, and exclusion. So, what are the roots of ethnic violence? The first is ethnic pluralism. Let's keep going.